Hello guys and gals, me Mutahar, and it's a pretty sad day for gamers. Why? Because one of the biggest sharing websites is getting shut down. For the gamers, no doubt. Now, I don't know how many of you all have heard about something known as Myrient. I'm sure some of you underground fellows might have heard of it, but obviously for the gamers that are, kind of a little bit new or just stuck to this generation, you're like, what is he yapping about? Ladies and gentlemen, I love game preservation. If you ever watch my channel, I love emulation. A lot of the most popular videos I have made on this channel probably wouldn't have been possible without emulation. Heck, half of the haunted gaming creepypasta gameplay recordings wouldn't have been popular if I couldn't emulate a video game. Now, to give you an idea, ladies and gentlemen, this is a cartridge of Pokemon Emerald. To the average person, this might not seem like much, but to a fuck on eBay, this is about $300, and that's when the game's battery runs dry. Yeah, $321, $475 for an authentic new battery version of Pokemon Emerald. Now, I think Pokemon Emerald's a great game. I don't think it's $475 fucking dollars of a great game. You know what I can do for $475? Anything but buy this. And that's where things like Myrient pretty much become sort of like one of the most important repositories for video games. Because yes, sites like this allow you to preserve and download older video games. Now, before somebody goes in, Muna, that's piracy. Piracy is haram. There's a lot of things that are haram, my friends, but let me be honest with you over here. Is downloading a fucking PlayStation 2 game? Is downloading a Game Boy Advance game really that bad? Are you really going to be locked out of the kingdom of heaven if you decide to download it? Let me tell you right now, okay? God's got a lot of things to worry about. You downloading Pokemon Emerald.gba is not of the highest concern, okay? But that's the reality of the situation, right? Even companies like Nintendo don't often actually sell these games. One really cool thing that Nintendo, I guess, did was release Pokemon Leaf Green. Now, this is $30 Canadian, but you might be like, whoa, that's still too much. But here's the thing. Look up the price for what Pokemon Leaf Green physical costs and tell me if legally supporting the company, again, if morality was the only thing locking you down, this might be a pretty moral way to swallow the pill and play it officially, right? But there's a reason why I wouldn't even buy this. Because if I really wanted to play a GBA game, I would probably load up an emulator on my phone and just play games like Emerald right here. Full speed ups, full cheat mode so that I can mod in all of the event tickets and whatnot. And I can do that for any game. See, that's the beauty of downloading a ROM and emulating it on your devices. Even if, you just go, here's the future, okay? Hardware dies. All Game Boys, all PlayStations, all Xbox, hell, all computers have an expiry date, okay? Shit dies. Good luck trying to find an original PlayStation sometimes where the laser still works, okay? Sometimes you really have to make sure things are in pristine conditions. Now, see, I'm a gamer. I like playing video games, so I really don't give a shit if I play on the original hardware or an actual emulator. I just want to play the video game, right? If I want to play something like Xenosaga, bitch, I ain't digging out the original PlayStation for that. Okay, I'm just going to fire it up on an emulator and play it all the way through on my Steam Deck, like I think a normal gamer probably would. And that's, again, where sites like Myrient come into, actual, importance. So again, long story short, they're actually shutting down. March 31st, 2026, all of them are gone. So why are they going, ladies and gentlemen? Well, I decided to dig a little bit deeper into this, and unfortunately, it's just too expensive. Turns out, a lot of people downloading from high-quality servers makes it so the guy who's running the actual site is going out of pocket $6,000 every month, which obviously is not sustainable. $6,000, do the math, okay? That's more than the average salary of a United States resident, okay? All of this going towards people just freely downloading from your site. The other big problem that they also had was people that were running paywall download managers. So a lot of people just go on the internet and search for a video game in a ROM file, and they'll go to a website chocked to the fucking brim with ads and bullshit. And some of those sites will just literally download from Myrient. But sometimes those sites will do a really scummy thing, like tell you to pay for like faster access, which is usually them removing a like rate limiter for your download and then just selling you premium access to something that you probably could have just accessed for free, because that's what information probably should be treated like. And the other thing, as you can imagine, is the AI tech bros, okay? Rising RAM, SSDs, hard drive prices have surged so dramatically because of the demand for AI data centers, and that has caused Myrient's hosting expenses to obviously go up as well. Necessary upgrades to the storage and infrastructure have only exacerbated the problem. You ever wonder how big something like Myrient actually is? Myrient is an actual video game preservation site that hosts 330 terabytes of video game collections. Now, if I actually show you the kind of collections that they have going on over here, it contains more than just your average video game, and this is why it's actually so important. If you go to their files, one thing that I absolutely appreciate are things like lost levels. I love things like where you actually go to their ISO files. You can actually go to Sony, for instance. You can go to PlayStation 2. You can actually look up not just homebrew video games, but also the various demo discs that actually released. Remember during the time of our like 90s, early 2000s, there would be like PlayStation Underground magazines, and some of them would contain like actual DVDs, like actual PlayStation discs with demos, videos, and actual playable stuff. Yeah, some of these sites actually store that so you can relive demos, early like looks at video games, which again, I actually did use this resource to dig up the demo for like Metal Gear Solid 2, so I could actually show that on my channel. So again, really huge thing to see video games kind of do that. And again, not just video games, but video game preservation websites. Now, I don't know if they're actually going to be alive anymore, even if they get like a whole bunch of donations through and through, because again, it's just expensive. It's not just the hosting fees that suck ass for Myrient, it's the fact that buying hard drives and actual like, hardware to support the amount of shit that they're hosting is such an impossibility that this is honestly a lose-lose. And it's a huge lose for like video game people, because no matter who you are, preservation for any video game is ultimately important. I started this video off talking about something like Pokemon Emerald, and unfortunately on Nintendo's website you cannot buy this game right now and play it on your Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch 2 like you can with Leaf Green and Fire Red. And again, there's no good reason that Nintendo can't release Pokemon fucking Emerald on the Nintendo Switch store. It's just they don't want to, or maybe they'll do it like a year or two from now on, if I'm being hopeful. And I don't think video games should be at a situation where like ultimately it's at the behest of like the actual developer, right? Because I think anytime older video games just sort of exist, there's really no sin to just downloading a ROM from the GBA, PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2 era of video games that aren't actually even being sold anymore. The only way that you can fucking buy these video games is if you go to like eBay or like some third-party reseller that is jacking up prices simply because they're selling you a physical disc, okay? That's all that it is. Again, I don't care so much about owning shit physically. I think for people that are huge collectors, you're definitely the one to pay those prices. But most people are not collectors, most people are gamers. And I actually really feel for somebody that wants to play older video games, but unfortunately can't, because honestly, accessing not just the hardware, but sometimes the actual discs is impossible. It's economically unfeasible, right? I mean, video games in the modern era cost so much for some people that, I'm going to bring you up with like a history from back in the day when I used to be a teenager, when I used to be a preteen, when I used to be a kid. One of the things that I discovered was like the original like SNES emulators. And through those SNES emulators, I was able to download ROMs off the internet and play games like Legend of Zelda. I was able to play games like Chrono Trigger again on there. I was able to play stuff like Final Fantasy VI. I was able to play a lot of the games that I missed out on as a kid, because as a kid you can't just go to the store and buy a cartridge every so often. Now as an adult, I'm able to purchase games from those franchises and actually really appreciate the modern entries. When it came to things like Legend of Zelda, for instance, I would say most of the Legend of Zelda games that I played from the N64 era, from the GameCube era, from the Wii era, were probably all just ISO files or, Z64 ROMs that I had gotten. Obviously, later on in my life, when I can buy Nintendo games, I ended up buying games that came out later. And I even bought some of the older stuff that was available. There's also a lot of consoles and a lot of games that you just, again, like I said, you cannot fucking buy. That's why I think preservation is super duper important. And even when it comes to things like re-releases, like let's not joke around. There's even games like Bloodborne that are over 10 years old at this point that are not going to be remade. They're not going to be re-released. And while at the time you can now buy this game for PS5 and PS4, there's going to be a point where eventually it'll just become unsupported. So instead of relying on From Software, Sony, or whatever to re-release this, using Shat PS4 and a fucking PC, you can, 20 years even down the road, be able to download an exe file, download a package file, and actually run these games. Or again, if you want to do it completely legally, you can take your actual copy, back it up to your system, and run it like that. That's what I actually do for games like Metal Gear Solid 4. Speaking of Metal Gear Solid 4, Konami's re-releasing MGS4. And even with these re-releases, sometimes you have content that is actually removed. Like shit like the multiplayer modes, which even thanks to emulators and the preservation community, you can at least experience that stuff again, even if Konami doesn't want to put the effort in for it, or Sony, or anybody. It's just insane to me that, preservation, this is to me a really bad day. It's a bad day to be a gamer. Even if you're not somebody that emulates or fucks around with ROMs, there's a good chance that you probably want to look through the last few decades of video games and experience the birth of how franchises started, right? A lot of people out there, I think it's insane, right? Kids these days get a Final Fantasy every generation, and it's not even good. When I was a kid, PlayStation 1, we had 3 Final Fantasy games. Really good Final Fantasy games on the PlayStation 1. And I think it's impressive that there's just kids out there, teenagers, adults that are gamers now that, want to re-experience that, from their childhood. And in some cases, sure, you could buy a re-release, but sometimes the best way is to just get the original ISO files and actually emulate the game and play it as it was originally intended. Bro, insane shit, man. And that's not even getting into the other cool shit you can do with emulators, right? Right now, I'm actually playing through Biorand after finishing Ari Requiem. I didn't know this, but again, the team behind this tool put together an easily downloadable package that lets you easily modify and randomize old Resident Evil games so you can play them kind of as if they were actually just new games, right? Sometimes it's a super easy experience, sometimes it's a super difficult experience. But all of this is possible because of ROMs, emulation, and unfortunately it just hurts seeing one of the largest resources basically being shut down next month because of not just, gamers just pulling resources from them, obviously stretching their servers thin, but also having a dog shit amount of AI bros jack up prices so hard that people running this stuff, it just becomes a financial impossibility. Now, there is some people that are actually trying to preserve Myrient by downloading their archive and spreading it across multiple systems, and honestly, that might be a possibility that is great, but I just can't promote it simply because I do think it does promote to DMCA and piracy, and I don't know how that would fly on the channel. Also, I just don't know how that would fly ethically, even speaking. But ethics be damned in certain cases. I think game preservation is important, and it's just sad to see Myrient being shut down about this crap because losing access to video games that are stored off the third-party servers that even companies aren't supporting anymore is just a net negative. One example that I kind of have, and this is a reason why I have this old sort of iPhone sitting on my desk. It doesn't sit there for no reason. This iPhone contains a video game that I actually really want to play again that I cannot access. There's this game called Mission Europa on the original touch, on the original iPod Touch and iPhones. You can't access this game anymore. It's actually one of these incredibly in-depth sci-fi first-person role-play shooters. And I can't download this anymore because it doesn't exist on the App Store. I can't even run this on modern iPhones if I wanted to. So hopefully one day I'll be able to crack into this phone and maybe pull out the files that I think exist on this device and be able to replay a game from my teenage years. Unfortunately, till that day comes, I can only yap about how important game preservation is. So no, ladies and gentlemen, I don't want you to take this as like piracy is awesome. I want you guys to look at this from like the perspective of somebody that's gamed his entire life. I love playing video games. And I feel like for me, most of the video games that I play are just old games. Like, honestly, if you added up all of my hours for like 2025, hell, 2024, 23, 22, 21, it's mostly been video games released when I was a child. Some video games I've been playing before I was even conceived, okay? Before my dad even shot me into my mom, there were video games being released that I'm playing now and appreciating. And unfortunately, I think losing access to some of these, like, services is never a good thing. I know there's a few gamers out there that literally live off ROMs these days, and I guess all I can really say is preserve what you can right now, because gaming is about to lose one of its biggest resources in literally a month. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, sad day, but yeah, felt like I should talk about it because maybe some awareness could be raised. Hey, maybe things could be thrown around. I'd be down to chip in a few bucks if other people will be too. Simply because, hey, if it could turn things around, awesome. But, ladies and gentlemen, this is me, Mutahar, and hope you have a great day. I am out.